Third part. However, as Dee fell, he thrust his sword into the rock face before him. And perhaps it was a result of his otherworldly pose, or maybe it was Dee's skill. But the blade sank halfway into the rock, supporting its wielder. But Dee didn't move after that. With no footing for a leap upward, he was left hanging in midair, literally high and dry, as the saying went. "You are a stalwart foe," Viscount Albedozen laughed, standing on a rock just shy of the edge of the cliff, a scant 15 feet above the hunter. Iriya was in his arms. However, you find yourself in quite a fix. You may hang there helpless as a bagworm, and watch as I make this girl mine. His lips latched onto her supple neck. Iriya writhed, but when the lips came away, there was no wound there. Apparently it had been an ordinary kiss. Although it seemed like the Viscount wanted to sink his fangs into her, he sounded somehow dissatisfied as he said, "I was going to take this girl to Kraken's castle, though at first he intended to kill her and dispatched assassins toward the end. He came to harbor the same doubts that I do, and changed his mind. And there is something unusual about this girl. She leaves me ill at ease, and as a result, I have decided to grant her the blood of the nobility here and now. Forgive me, Kraken, but you share the anxiety I feel. Now I will remove the need for it." His mouth opened wide, and within it gleamed a gruesome pair of fangs. More than anything, it was the blood-crazed look on the noble's face that spoke of his true intention this time. Strength flowed into Dee's right arm. His muscles became iron. His body rose immediately. With nothing but the power of one arm, he propelled himself upward. There was a whistle as the black streak knifed through the darkness. The hunter had extracted his long sword as well. Albedozen bent backward almost reflexively, escaping with just a cut to the end of his nose, only because the timing of the blade had been thrown off. The nobleman backed off a few yards, and on seeing Dee on top of the cliff, he pressed his accursed lips to the throat of the enthralled Iriya. Iriya's body stiffened, then relaxed. Her vacant expression was quickly transformed into one of rapturous delight. No matter what a person's state of mind, from the peaks of excitement to the murky depths of despair, the kiss of the nobility would put them in a trance. When the Viscount turned and grinned at Dee, his lips were stained with blood. Licking them, the nobleman lifted Iriya with the intent to hurl her at the charging hunter. In his hands, the huntress's body spun agilely. "What?" The nobleman grunted and froze in his tracks. Iriya had landed behind him and plunged her dagger through his heart from the back, while Dee's blade raced forward, bringing with it the cruel crunch of severed vertebrae. As the Viscount's head sailed through the air in a gentle parabola and dropped into the gorge, it rotted away, turning to dust. Dee looked down at the noble's equally dusty cape without a word, and then crouched by Iriya's side. "Do you remember now?" Some time passed before Iriya looked up. Her expression was one of extreme fatigue, and she looked around dazedly. But on noticing the items at her feet, she finally expressed surprise. "This is Viscount Albedozen's. Dee, did you do that to him?" Dee looked down at his left hand. "She ain't tugging your chain. She's had her memories wiped clean." The the hoarse voice said. Closing her eyes, almost as if she'd been wounded, Iriya said, "My memory is wiped clean. Did I do something?" "You slew Albedozen," said Dee. "What? What?" Iriya exclaimed, her face slowly contorting with shock. "But before you did, he fed on you. There were no marks on your neck. It's like you were never bitten." "What do you mean?" "You're telling me I was bitten, but there's no wound on my throat. You must have seen it wrong then." "Of everything you've said, there's just one name whose meaning remains unclear. It might be tied to a missing memory." "What name?" "Alucard." Iriya squinted her eyes, poring through her memories, but she quickly shook her head. "So this Alucard person set it up so that when I destroy a noble I lose all memory of it." "While you're fighting them, it's not your memories you lose, but your emotions. The memory eraser so you'll forget that you've been bitten. The human psyche isn't equipped to deal with that shock. Just getting bitten would probably take every last bit of fight out of you." "In that case, when I'm fighting and slaying nobles, I wouldn't remember anything, right?" "That's about the size of it," said the hoarse voice. "But I don't think there's a witch doctor or sorcerer in the world who could keep the kiss of the nobility from going into effect." "But you say Alucard?" "Alucard? Dee, are we setting out soon?" Iriya inquired, turning a doleful countenance toward the hunter. "It'll be dawn soon. We'll wait till then." "In that case, come with me. My brother's remains are in the carriage." He was a pile of dust and rotting bones on the floor. Putting them into her big brother's jacket, Iriya left the carriage and went to the edge of the cliff. "Ashes to ashes," she intoned in a faint voice, her eyes shut. "Dust to dust, be borne off on the winds, carried with the rain, lost in the ground, bring forth new trees and new grass, new flowers and new grains, bring forth new life." She scattered the dust, and the girl watched with an expression as her older brother's remains spread like smoke, melting away into the darkness. "It's done," she told Dee, and there were no tears in her eyes. The strength was returning to her stride as she walked toward Meeker, and watching her go, the hoarse voice remarked, "She does away with her own blood, and she ain't even upset about it. That's gotta warp you." "In what way?" Dee asked the hoarse voice. "If I knew that, it'd save us a lot of trouble. It's lousy for her, but hopefully it'll work out good for us." "It's lousy for her, but hopefully it'll work out good for us." "It's lousy for her, but hopefully it'll work out good for us." As the hunter walked back to his cyborg horse, Meeker called out to him, "How are we supposed to cross here? Now that the noble we are chasing has been slain, will we turn back?" "No, we'll keep going this way." Looking at Dee with utter disbelief, Iriya said, "We'll fall." Still facing the cliffs on the opposite side, Dee said, "Load the horse into the back of the carriage. The interior is an area of distorted space. You could fit 10,000 of them in there." "What'll we do?" Giving no reply, Dee went back into the carriage, and then quickly returned with a spool of wire over her shoulder. What are you going to do? Iriya's voice carried a tone that said, "You can't be serious." The supports are still there. In the darkness, the black iron supports that had secured the web of cables at both ends of the suspension bridge still towered on either cliff. Walking over to the brink of the cliff with a massive spool of steel wire, which must have weighed hundreds of pounds, Dee faced the opposite cliff, and uncoiled about 5 yards of wire that he began to twirl over his head like a lasso. Iriya muttered to herself something about how he must be joking, but her remarks were obliterated by a forceful whistle in the wind, and it wasn't the whispering of a breeze, it was the angry howls of a gale. Even before Iriya and Mika could react, the cyber horses backed away. Dee's right hand shot out, and the 2mm wire flew like a javelin to a support on the opposite side, which he coiled around as if it were a snake. It was a distance of over 600 feet. Giving a good tug to test its strength, Dee drew his sword and easily cut the wire with about 5 yards to spare, which he then wrapped around a support on their side of the cliff. Once the entire procedure had been repeated, there were 2 thin wires bridging the cliffs. "Get in the carriage," Dee told them, not showing a sign of exertion. "Wait just a second. You planning on crossing on those wires?" Mika looked pale, even in the darkness of night. Iriya had a distinct look of fear on her face. "Let's go," Dee said. A few minutes later, the carriage began to race across the new bridge. It looked for all the world like it was flying above the abyss. Chapter 6 End.